of tea with cyanide. Thai police said they believe the poisonings occurred after the group ordered food and English tea to their room on the 5th floor of the Grand Hyatt Erawan Hotel in Bangkok's commercial district. Well, our big focus, US President Joe Biden has tested positive for COVID, according to the White House, forcing him to cancel an event in Las Vegas and likely sidelining him for days following the conclusion of former President Trump's nominating convention on later today, actually. Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, said in a statement that earlier today, following his first event in Las Vegas, Biden tested positive for COVID-19. She added that he is vaccinated and boosted and he is experiencing mild symptoms. She said Mr. Biden would travel from Las Vegas to Delaware, where he would actually self-isolate. But if Joe Biden continues to test positive for the next week or more, it could keep him off the campaign trail. And if he continues to have symptoms, it could hamper his ability to perform well in interviews that he could do from home as well. But Joe Biden used his positive COVID-19 diagnosis to take a dig at Elon Musk and Republican opponent Donald Trump. In fact, Biden posted on X saying, "I'm sick," soon after news circulated of his testing positive for COVID-19. However, he followed that up with another post that continued of Elon Musk and his rich buddies trying to buy this election. And if you agree, pitch in here. That post included photos of Musk and Trump, along with a link to a donation site for the Biden campaign.
I made a serious mistake in the whole debate. And look, when I originally ran, you may remember it, I said I was going to be a transitional candidate. And I thought that I'd be able to move from this, just pass it on to someone else. But I didn't anticipate things getting so divided. And quite frankly, I think the only thing age brings a little bit of wisdom. And I think I've demonstrated that I know how to get things done for the country, in spite of the fact that we were told we couldn't get it done. But there's more to do, and I'm reluctant to walk away from that.
Hi, Benji joins us with the latest update from Ground Zero. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. at the moment. Biden's third bout with COVID, it comes as some of his allies and supporters are continuing to press for him to drop out of the race, citing concerns about his ability to defeat Donald Trump in November?
Yes, well, let's start with the good news, shall we? Joe Biden says, quote, he feels good, he is vaccinated, he is boosted, as you say. This is not the first time that he's caught COVID. But this is a major blow. It comes amid those calls for him to step aside, just as he was trying to withstand that pressure and head out on the campaign trail, though there had been in the past 24 hours alone repeated demands for him to consider his position. They came firstly from Adam Schiff, a senior member of the Democrat Party, who says he has serious concerns about whether Joe Biden can defeat Donald Trump in November. On top of that, we're learning that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, in a one-to-one meeting with Joe Biden, told him forcefully that the best thing he could do for the country would be to withdraw. And we're told that message is being heeded by a more receptive president. Still, so far, the 81-year-old has offered sort of a temperate defiance, though the line at which he said he'd step aside has certainly thinned. Initially, he said that he would only consider removing himself from the candidacy if there was some form of divine intervention. Now he says all it would take is some medical condition, not including, you presume, COVID-19. That denial still not enough to stop the flow of pressure in his direction, and in a bid really to try to prevent Joe Biden being ousted, the Democrat National Committee, I should say, is trying to bring forward the date on which he would be officially decided to be the nominee. That's not being taken well by many lawmakers on Capitol Hill, and the stark reality is also borne out in the polls, which show he is losing vast support amongst Democrat voters.
Yes, thanks so much. Hi, Benji, as always, for joining us with that live update from Washington. As Hi is reporting, nearly 2 in 3 Democrats say Joe Biden should step aside from the 2024 race. This as per the latest poll conducted by the Associated Press and Nork Center for Public Affairs Research. It was largely conducted prior to the assassination attempt against former President Trump over the weekend. But this poll found that 70% of voters surveyed said Biden should withdraw from the race and allow someone else to take on Trump this November. 65% of Democratic respondents said they believe Biden should step aside after his poor debate performance sparked worries about his ability to beat Trump and lead for another 4 years if re-elected. Only 35% of Democrats, by the way, said Biden should continue running for president. For further clarity, let's go across to Voice of America's Steve Herman, who joins us at the moment. Steve, since this poll was conducted mostly before Saturday's assassination attempt on Trump, it's unclear whether the shooting influenced people's views of Biden. But what have you been picking up on ground zero? Has Saturday's attack garnered sympathy that will likely translate into electoral gains for Donald Trump?
There's no evidence that it's moving the needle very much in the preliminary polling. I think what it does here in Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention, where thousands of delegates, diehard supporters of the party and Donald Trump have gathered, it really helps fire them up even further. And what it may do is get Republicans to go out to the polls in November that might have stayed at home, not thinking that they really need to go vote to make a difference in their respective states.
Right. In fact, Biden's recent diagnosis with COVID, having COVID is all but certain to complicate the president's ability to answer his critics, right? Many of whom have said that they want him to show that he still has the vigor and energy to prosecute the case against Trump, whether it's in campaign rallies, interviews, or other events.
Well, it just seems that Joe Biden can't catch a good break right now. There was that disastrous performance at the debate. And, the further pressure coming from prominent Democrats. We had one today, Congressman Adam Schiff, who's probably going to win the U.S. Senate seat in California this year. It was very close to former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, coming out just hours before that COVID announcement, saying that Joe Biden needs to pass the torch. So every day, it just seems that there's a little bit more bad news for Joe Biden, while the news this week here in the United States is very much focused on what's going on in this building right behind me, the Republican National Convention, which is essentially a coronation for the 3rd consecutive time for Donald Trump as the Republican Party's presidential nominee.
Right. In fact, Trump's vice presidential pick, J.D. Vance, is set to make his first speech as the Republican vice presidential nominee, where you are, on the 3rd night of the Republican National Convention. And we are hearing that the night is expected to focus specifically on foreign policy. What are the key takeaways so far?
Well, the key takeaways have been very much a focus on the issue of immigration, on the issue of crime, and trying to link those two to some degree, although statistics don't necessarily show that immigrants commit more crimes than people who were born in this country. And you're right, this is going to be a big night for J.D. Vance, just announced a couple of nights ago by Donald Trump as his running mate. He is a name that may not be familiar to a lot of Americans, but even before he was a senator, he had a little bit of name recognition because he wrote a book called Hillbilly Elegy, which was made into a Hollywood movie about his growing up in a very poor region of the United States, the Appalachian region, and then him going off to Yale Law School, joining the elite, and now perhaps, if Donald Trump wins in November, becoming the next vice president of the United States.
Right, lots happening at the RNC where you are in Milwaukee. But separately, Steve, Biden is trying desperately to end the conversation about his cognitive capacity and address what polls suggest are 3 of his biggest political weaknesses: immigration, the economy, and slipping support among Latinos. But the COVID diagnosis, does it mean he will not be able to mount an aggressive campaign push in the coming days, as opposed to Trump's campaign?
Well, certainly not in the coming days. He flew back from Las Vegas, where he was to make a speech before a Hispanic group, and is on Air Force One heading for Delaware. And we got the schedule for tomorrow. He will be there all day at Rehoboth Beach in Delaware, his house there, and nothing on his schedule whatsoever. How many more days? We don't know. That will depend on when he gets a negative COVID test, obviously.
Right. Also, some within the GOP camp argue that Saturday's assassination attempt has practically sealed the election campaign. What are you picking up on in Milwaukee at the RNC where you are?
Well, of course, that's what Republicans believe, and most delegates that you would ask here, even without the assassination attempt, would have said that they believe Donald Trump is going to win this election. And if he doesn't win the election, it means it is rigged, which is what Donald Trump falsely claimed in the previous presidential election when he didn't win re-election. Obviously, everyone here is outwardly going to be very positive about Donald Trump's chances. Right. And the others who opposed him previously all came together last night to support him.
Steve, always a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you so much for joining us with the latest.
Mike.
Steve Herman's in Milwaukee at the moment, where J.D. Vance, the freshman senator from Ohio, tapped by former U.S. President Donald Trump, his running mate, he will be headlining the third night of the Republican National Convention. The third night opened with fiery speeches denouncing President Joe Biden. In fact, some within the GOP camp argue that Saturday's assassination attempt has practically sealed the election campaign. Listen in.
My first question, how has the assassination attempt impacted Donald Trump's campaign strategy and messaging? And have there been any changes to Trump's rally and event schedule? And if so, what are they?
This particular event, that assassination attempt, has practically sealed the election campaign. It's almost over. It's very challenging at this point for Democrats to figure out what to do, because such a such a contrast has been laid out in the minds of the electorate that, on one hand, 2 weeks prior to this, you have this debate between President Trump and President Biden, where everybody recognizes, including President Biden, that it was really a bad night for him. And, he just seemed to be lost. He didn't seem to be anywhere. I could not answer any question. Sleepy Joe, as he's being known as. And in contrast to that, you have a man of steel, a fighter, doesn't look like even 78 years old, that after getting shot in his right ear, and fortunately, if he had been looking straight, it would have gone through his head, the bullet, and the assassination attempt. And 30 seconds after he is taken to the ground, he goes down by Secret Service. He gets up and has this fighting spirit, says, fight on, fight on, fight on. And, so that's what Americans like to see in their president. So that's why I say, as it stands right now, unless the Democrats come up with a different candidate, and they still have a month to go, unless they do something like that, this election is over.
Is there a possibility of rethink on the Democratic side? I mean, the other side?
They have to come up with something different. Right now, I'm still betting on last minute President Barack Obama convincing his wife, Michelle Obama, to step in. Then there will be a real contest. I would say probably then between Trump and Michelle Obama, there will be a contest. Between President Trump and Joe Biden, there is no contest. Between President Trump and Kamala, there's no contest. So they got to find somebody else. And inside, and I'm connected to a Democrat Hindu coalition as well. So I work with the other side as well. So they're good friends. Let's say behind the scenes, everybody wishes on the Democrats' part that Michelle Obama is persuaded to become the Democrat nominee.
All right. Thank you so much for your time and wishing you all the best because the campaign is still heating up, as they say, and long way to go for the final day on which the polling will happen. Continue to stay in touch with us. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Shalabh Kumar, a close aide of Donald Trump and someone who's involved in the entire campaign strategy of the Republicans.
In other crucial news, Bangladesh deployed a paramilitary force after at least 5 people were killed during violent demonstrations by thousands of university students, raising the specter of instability in a country familiar with protests. For weeks, students across Bangladesh have been protesting quotas for government jobs that were recently reinstated after being abolished in 2018 following another countrywide student protest. But the protests were first started by students of the University of Dhaka, and now they have spread to other universities and cities and turned increasingly political, pitting the ruling party against the opposition. Here are the details for you.
Student protests escalate in Bangladesh, with at least 6 people having been killed and hundreds injured after weeks of massive protests turned violent and shut down all schools and universities. The protests grew increasingly violent as police dispersed rallies with rubber bullets, tear gas, and lobbed sound grenades, injuring dozens more. The anti-quota protesters have been demanding an end to a job quota which reserves up to 30% of government jobs to the families of veterans who fought in Bangladesh's War of Independence. Protesters argue that the job quota is discriminatory and instead should be merit-based. Some have even alleged that it directly benefits groups supporting Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina.
আমরা কোটা যৌক্তিক সংস্কার চাইছিলাম, আমরা আর কিছু চাই নাই। আমি টাকাবাসীর পড়ালেখা করতেছি, পড়ালেখা করার পর 6 বছর পর যদি আমার কোনো জব না হয়, এই যে আমার পরিবারের ভোগান্তি, আমার ভোগান্তি সরকার নিবে, এটা কি দেশ নিবে?
According to ground reports, the protests intensified following a statement from the Prime Minister in which she used the term Razakar, which refers to people who collaborated with the Pakistani army during the 1971 Independence War, to label those opposing the quotas. The protesters retaliated and started chanting slogans calling themselves Razakars. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has since responded, calling the chants unfortunate and regrettable, and that the anti-quota protesters do not feel any shame for calling themselves as such. In light of the protests, Bangladesh has ordered all schools and universities to be shut down until further notice. But as demonstrations continue and students go on to be injured, the anti-quota protests are shaping up to be the biggest challenge for Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's government since winning a 4th term earlier this year. Samia Afsar for NDTV.
And Ridwan Ahmed joins us from Dhaka for the latest from Ground Zero. Thanks so much, Ridwan, for making time for us. Now, citing the safety of students, government officials have announced that they would shut down most schools and colleges indefinitely as these protests rage on.
Yes, so this instruction came on the day before yesterday, when most of the government institutions were declared closed. And yesterday, the government, especially the universities, they have instructed the students to vacate the dormitories, which the students denied. They said they don't want to leave the university premise, and that fueled more protest across the university campuses in Dhaka, in the outskirts. There's called Jahangirnagar University, where people got hurt. I mean, the students, reporters, they got injured who came in between the clashes of the police and between the protesting students. So yeah, and today, especially today, the protesting students, they have announced a nationwide shutdown because, as you have seen, the protest has now spread across the nation. It's not confined to Dhaka anymore, the capital anymore. So students from all across the countries have come to the streets, and they have announced that they're observing a nationwide shutdown.
Yes.
And that's going on as we speak right now.
Right, as Ridwan is reporting, members of the Border Guard of Bangladesh, which is actually normally responsible for border security, has been sent to 5 districts across the country to control the law and order situation amid ongoing quota reform movement in Bangladesh. Thanks so much, Ridwan, for joining us with the latest. In other news, the aging monarch in the UK arrived in a golden carriage and put on a bejeweled crown weighing more than a sack of sugar. The new Prime Minister wore an ordinary suit with a burgundy tie and listened as King Charles III conveyed all that Britain's first Labour government in 14 years wants to do. Britain's King Charles has set out Prime Minister Keir Starmer's legislative agenda, promising a government of service focused on reviving the economy and tackling issues from an acute housing shortage to a cost of living crisis. But Starmer does face a number of daunting challenges, including improving struggling public services with little room for more spending. The speech, by the way, confirmed that the government wants to reset the relationship with the European partners, roiled by Britain's exit from the European Union back in 2020.
My government will govern in service to the country. My government's legislative programme will be mission-led and based upon the principles of security, fairness and opportunity for all. Stability will be the cornerstone of my government's economic policy, and every decision will be consistent with its fiscal rules. It will legislate to ensure that all significant tax and spending changes are subject to an independent assessment by the Office for Budget Responsibility.
And to what many are calling a rare political spectacle, well, we saw smiles and chatter as Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak attended the King's speech under the Labour government. Keir Starmer looked happy and relaxed as he walked into the House of Lords, flanked by opposition leader Rishi Sunak, who spoke animatedly with the new Labour Prime Minister. Take a look. Well, news and updates continue in a moment, right after this very short break.
In the global employability rankings by Times Higher Education UK, only the following 6 institutions from India are ranked amongst the top 230 in the world for having the most employable graduates.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
Some people say the metaverse will only be virtual. One day this lecture hall will be made of code, and driverless cars would be trapped in intersections. But even in this maze of the future, you can't wish away health. It's time to become more resilient. "10 years of Banega Swasth India, we have grown and achieved so many milestones. And now I have a plan to beat the urgency, to stop breathing with difficulty, to relieve getting choked with inactivity. Energize our government, our environment, our society, and ourselves. Everyone, everywhere, every day. Banega Swasth India. One world hygiene.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
The So a $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Well, it's about that time. It's awards season and the Emmys are serving a chaotic menu. Netflix led the way with 107 nominations, followed closely by FX, which had 93, and HBO, which had 91. Meanwhile, The Bear, which is still staying in the comedy category, ended up breaking an Emmys record. Shogun might have led all the nominees with 25 nods, but The Bear stole headlines after breaking the record for comedy series with 23 nominations, including a nod for Outstanding Comedy Series. While the Emmys continues to categorize The Bear as a comedy, viewers on social media have now continued to point out that with the show's exploration of drug addiction, grief and PTSD, the majority of its content is far from funny.
Are you a good man, Bear?
I try to be.
I know the noise you have inside your head. I know it's...
Thank you for investing your time in watching this edition of The World 24/7. We'll keep tracking the latest political developments for you from around the world. Do stay tuned.
The biggest democratic exercise in the world. Team NDTV covers it from ground zero.
BJP really had to fight a tough election this time.
Unprecedented exercise. Unmatched coverage.
There is no dispute. जनता को decide करना है.
From polling to counting, NDTV brought you the most trustworthy news and updates. Elections mean NDTV.
25 years ago, an unprecedented attack on a part of India very few people knew about. Kargil, a war fought at unprecedented heights, India's first televised war.
We are here because we have to be here, because it's the uniform.
We were there, on the ground and in the air.
A final assault.
To bring you stories of valor and sacrifice. 25 years after Kargil. Join us for special and exclusive programming right here on NDTV.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you. NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number one in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust.
25 years ago, an unprecedented attack on a part of India very few people knew about. Kargil, a war fought at unprecedented heights. India...
This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
Hello, Moto.
Karnataka government holds the jobs reservation bill